Hello everyone, my name is Luis, and today I'll be presenting my project titled Intro to Tech. So the idea is that as time progresses, we're now in like a level that basically from here forward it's just going to be more technology on everything. So as you can assume, I came up with the idea of creating a website application that is free and accessible to anyone with a computer and internet, which nowadays lots of people have that anyways. And the sole purpose is to provide a unique introductory learning experience in programming or computer science related topics. And the main goal of this project and website is for it to be completely free, and the primary audience for this would be middle school to high school students. And for example, some type of content that we can have on the website would be learning the basics of a programming language like C++, JavaScript, or Python, or maybe even teaching introductory level topics in the field of computer science. So parts for development, we would have the actual website application itself, which would then be split into the front end development, back end development, and the database itself. And for this project, we would primarily be using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for the front end. For the back end, we would be using PHP and JSON. The JSON would be used to store the contents of the website into the database. For the database, we would be using a relational database. I still haven't made up my mind whether it's better to use Postgre or MySQL. And maybe even integrate Node.js for the front end and back end development, but that's still up for debate. The website application itself would be designed with the simplistic user interface. For the younger generations, as you can imagine, it would have, in order to keep the users engaged, it would be much better to keep it simple and not complicated. We would also feature a login and registration system for the users. On the website itself, we would have a lot of images and graphics, of course, to keep the user's attention. The user can have their own profile page and achievements and accomplishments of what they've learned so far. And another option would be to not allow users full access of all the content. They would have to follow certain pathways and requirements. For the front end development portion, that includes the basic structure of the website, the use of JavaScript for a non-static website with key features, and CSS for designing a simplistic professional website. And the main goal of the front end is to display the content in the best possible way. As for the back end development, we would have the verification of users using their email and password. We would implement security measures on the website to prevent certain attacks or ways people can get around from the JavaScript. We would have lots of PHP scripting to provide an effective communication between the relational database and the client side. And like mentioned earlier, we would use the JSON files, which would contain lots of data based on the content that we plan on presenting, and store it in the database. That way we can then pull it from the database onto the actual client side. For the database, like mentioned, it's most likely going to be a relational database, but we can still look into the non-relational databases as well. A couple tables that we can have in the database are the users table, which would store the email, possibly the name, first name, last name, and password of a user. We would have the content table, which would store all our learning material that we plan on displaying on the website. We can have a quiz table, which we would create quizzes ourselves in order to measure the user's grasp on the certain subject. We can have a projects table, which would store projects relating to the content being displayed. And we would also have a progress table, which would help us keep track of what the user has accomplished so far. And more possible features include more advanced teaching implementations for a better user experience. This can be in the form of videos or coding challenges, and possibly integrate mini learning games for the younger generation. So that itself would be maybe even like another little sub project, because some learning games would take more time to develop, of course. And of course, we're open to suggestions, since this is an open project. And as for the team, of course, we would have one product manager or the leader, which is pretty much just managing everything and helping in all aspects as well. Most of the work would be done in the front end and back end development portion, which is why we would need 2 to 3 people just working on that alone. And then we would need one person to be in charge of the relational databases. And we would also need a content creator, which we preferably we'd rather make up our own content and make sure that it's accurate rather than use some that's online. And positions are flexible, and we want everyone to be involved with every aspect of the project.